Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Today, our topic is from revenge to apology, forgiveness, and reconciliation. This is a product of a sharing session with American Mediator Ken Cloke, Kenneth Cloke. Nag-enroll ako sa isang session niya, and ito, maraming reflections. This is a lot of reflections, quotes from poets and novelists and authors. Basically, very widely read siya and very reflective. So magaganda yung mga reflection na share niya. And pinaikli ko lang to kasi 3 hours, 2 hours yung aming sharing session. May question and answer portion pa. I don't think I'd be able to entertain questions, but some comments lang, no? Huwag niyo akong tanungin ng questions, no? Comments lang and reflections ang kaya kong i-accommodate in this session. Okay. Bakit ba tayo nagre-revenge? Yan ang tanong. Why revenge?
Because we are angry.
Oo. Why revenge? Isang quote niya, basahin natin itong quote from Sandor Maray. Si Sandor Maray ay isang Hungarian writer and journalist, born in the 1900s. All that was left was the waiting and the thirst for revenge. And now that the waiting is over and the time for revenge is here, I am amazed to feel how hopeless it all is, and the pointlessness of anything we could learn or admit or fight out between us. Time is a purgatory that has cleansed all fury from my memories. Ganda, no? Apat ang possibilities for why study apology, forgiveness, and reconciliations. How does any conflict end? There are 4 possibilities. One is in forgetfulness or silence, or a weakening of interest that appears as apathy. Pero sa ilalim nitong pretend endings na to, the conflict continues, sapping our energies, weakening our spirits, and stealing our lives. So that's one possibility. Another alternative is that the conflict ends in revenge, in a personal enactment of the law of the talon. Life for a life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Grabe, ang tindi niya, no? Sa Bible galing yan, ha? Yet here also there is no end to the conflict, which continues to be paid out in lives, eyes, teeth, feet, and in their emotional and relational consequences. So yan yung nangyayari sa Lido, no? Walang katapusan. Unless, possibility number 3 is for conflicts to move in the direction of ending through apology and forgiveness. These declare an end to hostilities and express a desire to return to relationship. They help us complete the stage of loss and move from anger to acceptance. So yung third lang, apology and forgiveness lang ang maaaring mag-end, ang magpatigil sa revenge. And the only final end to conflict comes with reconciliation. Reconciliation. When we open our hearts again to others and risk the pain of living open-heartedly. Di ba? Ang ganda.
Wow.
What is revenge? Ang dami niyang definition, pero ang gusto ko ito is, di ba, a willingness to hurt ourselves in order to hurt someone else. Imagine that. When we hurt someone else, we also hurt ourselves. A desire for release from suffering through catharsis. A relationship that is intimate, lasting, and non-consensual. An effort to reverse humiliation by means of arrogant action. Ang gusto ko ito, a search for equivalence, a leveled playing field, an equality of suffering. An attempt to reverse one's victimization by victimizing the perpetrator. A cry of pain in the ear of one who has not heard or cannot hear. A determination to block the happiness of others as our happiness has been blocked. A binding of our life to the life of the one who hurt us. A desire to punish another or retaliate for our own loss of innocence or the disappointment caused by our own false expectations. An effort to communicate not through words but through action what it felt like to be hurt or treated badly. How is revenge achieved? There's direct, leading to vendetta, only one eye for one eye, etc. Limitation of revenge to the crime. Pwede ding divine punishment through karma or in the hereafter by a deity, although malabo yun, no? Pero manghilig ng Pinoy dyan, makarma ka sana. Diba? Spiritual punishment in this life through blindness or guilt. Punishment by the victim that is authorized by the state. So ito yung justice, exclusive right to punishment that is vested in and carried out by the state. Pwede ring mediation between victim and offender at the request of either party as referred by the state, or restorative justice and truth and reconciliation processes, including sentencing circles. So iba-ibang way of getting revenge ito, including getting justice authorized.
Mediation pala, ano? Revenge.
It's a
way of
it's a way of getting back, ano?
Getting back. Ganun ba yun? Eh kung ang perspective sa mediation ay win-win, hindi na getting back.
Oo, pwede rin ganun.
Humanizing both.
Oo. So, ibang perspective ng mediation ito, no? It's a form of revenge, form of retribution. So, parang mabigyan ka ng puwang para maka-reach out dun sa kabilang party. Kasi kung hindi pa ceasefire, kung walang communication between parties, wala kang pagkakataon to do revenge. May mga ganong situation, and mediation is one aspect of getting revenge achieved. Diba? It's a different perspective on mediation.
Pero when you are mediating, you're not aiming to hurt the other. You aim to resolve. Parang iba yung concept niya ng revenge.
Oo. 10 reasons for seeking revenge. To obtain justice and fairness, to see evil struck down and virtue rewarded, to remedy shame through arrogant action, to find release from anger in activity or in ritual. Ito, to communicate to the perpetrator what it feels like to be a victim. To make the crime understandable by repeating it. To experience the ecstasy and sensuality of violence. Diba?
Ano naman yan?
To tear off the mask and reveal a deeper layer of feelings. Ito, to create the equality between the victim and the perpetrator in power, pain, humiliation, and sacrifice. Kasi pagka nagkaroon ng violence or isang offense, it's an unequal situation. So you want to create equality.
Pareho na tayong nasaktan. Parang ganun.
Pareho na tayong nasaktan. That's the why reasons for seeking. Pero why not seek revenge? Revenge strips the actor of the title victim and takes away the mantle of respect due by sympathy to no one who is acted upon. Revenge cuts both ways. All violence wounds the perpetrator as well as the victim. If the aim of revenge is to teach the perpetrator what it feels like, there are ways of doing so that do not condone violence by repeating it. Revenge is humiliating and degrading, even if it is also satisfying. Revenge is powerless, even when it is powerful. It takes power away from the victim. When accomplished by the state, revenge is inhuman, impersonal.
Ang state pwede rin mag-revenge.
Abstract. Pagka death penalty.
Revenge ba yun? Justice yun, di ba?
Oo. Sabi nga nila, sanctioned by the state. It's a revenge sanctioned by the state. Diba? And supports a culture of violence. Revenge is easily overdone, ignores the humanity of victim, and often leads to feelings of guilt or remorse. Revenge does not acknowledge the prior victimization of the perpetrator. May pinanggagalikan daw yan, no? Nung bata pa sila. It blames the victim and diverts attention from institutional and social change. Revenge is socially divisive and may reproduce for generations. Revenge encourages the victim to identify with the aggressor and with the act of aggression as justifiable. Who can establish a borderline between guilt and innocence when that borderline runs somewhere right between the middle of each and every person? What was justice? Justice was revenge, wrapping itself in a cloak of high principle. Yan, sabi ni Ivan Klima yan. She is a Czech lalaki to, no? Czech novelist and playwright. 90 years old na yan, si Ivan Klima. It is sabi naman ni James Baldwin, si James Baldwin is a Black American writer and activist. Sabi niya, it is a terrible and inexorable law that one cannot deny the humanity of another without diminishing one's own. In the face of one's victim, one sees oneself. So ito yung iba-ibang perspectives sa revenge, no? Ang ganda nito, no? Justice was revenge wrapping itself in a cloak of high principle. 3 alternatives to revenge. Daron tatlong ways or alternatives to revenge. 1, holding on to one's anger, converting it into an icon or an obsession. But remaining a victim all one's life is neither fun nor interesting, nor do people continue to dispense sympathy to professional victims and turn increasingly to avoidance. So holding on to one's anger. Second, denying the anger, suppressing the desire for revenge, and trying to forget it. This works for many people. But the mind does not easily forget victimization and the humiliation that always accompanies it. And one returns throughout one's life to relieve the horror. Suppression and denial do not work well in the long run, creating a distorted perception of oneself and others. It results to illness and addiction daw. So yung mga illness and addiction, these are denied anger. Third, ang option mo is forgiveness, which can be chosen by anyone and easiest to accomplish, yet often the last to be chosen, especially where it is voluntary, confidential, and facilitated by a third party, as when it is part of mediation. The effort of the mediator is to move angry parties as far as possible in the direction of forgiveness, not primarily for moral reasons, but for reasons of self-interest. But as forgiveness is individual and personal, the mediator becomes a coach in the forgiveness process. So, bihira natin itong makita, no, na role ng mediator. But really, we are facilitators of forgiveness, which is often the last option. But we want to do it not for moral reasons, but for the benefit of the parties themselves. It is beneficial for the parties to forgive. ang ganda nito, sinabi ni Olive Moore about anger. Si Olive Moore is a modernist English writer born in 1904. Sabi niya, be careful with hatred. Handle hatred with respect. Hatred is too noble an emotion to be frittered away in little personal animosities. Whereas love is of itself a reward, personal hatred has no triumphs that are not trivial, secondary, and human. Therefore, love as foolishly as you may, but hate only after long and ardent deliberation. Hatred is a passion requiring 100 times the energy of love. Keep it for a cause, not an individual. Keep it for intolerance, injustice, stupidity. For hatred is the strength of the sensitive. Its power and its greatness depend on the selflessness of its use. Di ba? Galing. Basahin nyo na lang to kasi mahabang istorya to, yung The Eumenides by Aeschylus. The Furies, dapat yung The Furies, they are the revenge, goddesses of revenge. Pero si Athena placed them in charge of family felicity and makes them keepers of the heart of all time in a victory that brings no disaster. Pero maganda yung istorya ng The Eumenides. Ang haba nga lang. Sabi ni Sandor Maray, again si Sandor Maray, isang Hungarian writer and journalist. Yesterday, all this seemed impossible, pointless, and uncertain. Yesterday was a different reality. Yesterday, you still yearned for revenge or deliverance. You wanted him to ring you or to need you. You wanted him to be carted off to jail and executed. While you still feel this, the other person is out of reach and laughing. While you still feel it, you are in his power. As long as you are crying out for revenge, for vengeance, he is gleefully rubbing his hands together because vengeance is desire too. Vengeance is dependency. But there comes a day when you wake, rub your eyes, give a yawn, and suddenly discover you don't want anything. You could bump into him in the street and it wouldn't matter to you. Now you no longer want vengeance. No vengeance at all. And you discover what real vengeance is. The only perfect form of vengeance, which is that there is nothing you want from him. You wish him no harm, but no good either. He cannot hurt you anymore. O, diba? Galing. Now, why apology? Sabi ng Dalai Lama, in why way, having an enemy is very bad. It disturbs our mental peace and destroys some of our good things. But if we look at it from another angle, only an enemy gives us an opportunity to practice patience. O, diba? No one else provides us with that opportunity for tolerance. Since we do not know the majority of the 5 billion human beings on this earth, therefore, the majority of people do not give us an opportunity to show tolerance or patience either. Only those people whom we know and who create problems for us really provide us with a good opportunity to practice tolerance and patience. Therefore, an enemy is indeed a precious teacher. Diba? By thinking along these lines, you can eventually reduce the negative mental emotions, particularly hatred. I consider hatred to be the ultimate enemy. The Dalai Lama. What is an apology? Ito, Madet, ang ganda nito. Apologies are rituals designed to cure arrogance through humility, obeisance, respect, and appreciation for the suffering of others, thereby rebalancing power in the relationship. An apology is a statement that says, I value our relationship more than I value being right. An apology is a shift from power-based and rights-based assumptions to interest-based ones that are not oriented toward maintaining power or rights in relationships, but on improving them without deciding who was right or wrong. An apology is a test to see if you get it and can recognize the pain or harm that someone else experienced. An apology is a voluntary self-subordination and the first step in a return to equity, collaboration, and problem solving. An apology is also the first step in letting go of false expectations of being the only one who is right. An apology is the beginning of redemption and of forgiving ourselves and others. Ito daw ang elements of an apology. Sabi ng 755 people, an apology should contain the following 6 elements. 1, an expression of regret. 2, an explanation of what went wrong. 3, an acknowledgement of responsibility. 4, a declaration of repentance. 5, an offer of repair. 6, a request for forgiveness.
Parang 4 pillars din yan.
The more the elements, the more the 6 are present, the more effective it was rated. So, 6 yan. Kailangan nandun lahat yung 6 elements. To be effective, an apology should contain an acknowledgement or recognition of the harm that was done, include a sincere expression of regret, and not offer any defense or rationalization for what was done. Ito, na-experience ko ito, no? Yung first apology ko was not accepted. So, ni-refine ko, ni-reformulate ko yung apology ko to contain a recognition of the harm that was done, a sincere expression of regret. It has to be sincere. And walang rationalization. It has to be authentic and not legally hedged or circumspect. It should be grounded in cultural expectations. It should recognize the past and history in order to prevent them from continuing into the future. So yung guarantee of non-recurrence, ano? Pakinggan mo ito. Careful, defensive apologies are often worse than no apology at all. Isang example, former President Richard Nixon. I regret deeply any injuries that may have been done in the course of events that have led to this decision. I would say only that if some of my judgments were wrong and some were wrong, they were made in what I believe at that time to be in the best interest of the nation. So, rationalization, ano? Walang sincerity, walang remorse. Sabi ni Desmond Tutu, Chair of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, my dear white compatriots, ito yung hinahingi-hingi niya sa white compatriots niya. You have been let down by most of your leaders who have made you out to be mean-spirited to respond to the incredible magnanimity and generosity of the victims. Please grasp this opportunity. Is there no leader of some stature and some integrity in the white community who won't try to be too smart, who is not trying to see how much he can get away with, but who will say quite simply, we had a bad policy that had evil consequences. We are sorry. Please forgive us. Yun ang hinahanap pala niya. 3 phrases lang, ano? We had a bad policy that had evil consequences. We are sorry. Please forgive us. Sa local context natin, yung I am sorry ni GMA. Bakit kulang? Walang genuine expression of remorse, walang acknowledgement of the history, walang repentance, no? At walang recognition of the harm that was done. So kulang na kulang yung all elements lahat.
Pakibalik daw sa 6 elements, sabi ni Marisa. Yan.
An expression of regret, an explanation of what went wrong, an acknowledgement of responsibility, a declaration of repentance, an offer of repair. Ito yung ginawa ko dun sa kulang sa apology ko. Sabi ko, kasi itong istorya, yung ate ko at ako, share kami ng labandera. sabi ko, one day, sabi ko, FYI, kukunin ko si labandera sa araw na ito at sa araw na ito. Nagalit yung ate ko. Aba, FYI lang, wala kaming say. FYI lang. Sabi ko, naku, sorry. Hindi na mauulit. Hindi niya in-accept. Gano'n na lang kadali. Sorry ka na lang.
Wow.
Naku, nag-reflect ako sa sarili ko. Sabi ko, why is she so angry? Baka hindi ko napaparating yung aking sincerity at yung remorse na nararamdaman ko. So sabi ko, sige ate, hindi ko na siya kukunin. I will resign from my job and do the laundry myself. I will not bother. I will not hindi ako nagpapapututsyada ha. I was really tearful when I said it. I'm sorry I caused you so much pain. I realize I have taken for granted your generosity. Yung mga ganon. So, ganito na lang. Sige, hindi ko na lang siya kukuhanin. So, tinanggap niya and sabi niya, sige, you may get her. And wag ka namang mag-resign sa job mo. Kailangan mo naman. So, an effort, a prepare, and a request for forgiveness. Yan yung 6 elements. Sige, pakisabi sa akin kung may comments, ha? Why apologize? A little apology goes a long way and helps repair relationships. Sometimes the best way of diffusing anger is to apologize for your part in the misunderstandings or miscommunications that occurred and for the discomfort of or pain your opponent experienced as a result of your actions. Apology does not mean you were wrong or bad. It means you understand what the other person felt and experienced and are sorry for what you contributed to their discomfort. Apology can demonstrate quite simply that you want to let go of your anger and return to having a more positive relationship. Apology signifies a willingness to accept responsibility for your behavior and contribution to the conflict, inviting your adversary to follow suit, di ba? The acceptance of responsibility through the apology often leads to resolution and melting away the anger that keeps it going. Apology is healing and cleansing. Confession is good for the soul. The story of an apology. It will help you think. Once a man came to see the Buddha to challenge his beliefs and ended up insulting him, to which the Buddha did not respond. The man returned several weeks later and apologized for his behavior. The Buddha said, the one who is apologizing is no longer the one who was insulting.
Wow.
And the one he is insulted is no longer here. But if I see him again, I will tell him what you said.
Ganda.
Ganda, diba? The man bowed deeply and left. Galing. So, common elements of a genuine apology, ulit-ulitin natin, humility, authenticity, honesty, acceptance of personal responsibility, vulnerability and openness, not passing the buck or blaming others, not justifying or excusing what was done, acknowledgement of the pain and suffering of the other, recognition of the role you played in causing it. Di ba? So, dalawang bagay yun, no? And expression of empathy or understanding. Statement of regret or shame or guilt. No requirement of reciprocity or apology in return. Lack of requirement of acceptance. Openness to problem solving. Commitment to restitution, fixing the problem or reparations. Realization of commitments and intentions through action. So, genuine na genuine yan. So, may formula pa siyang inoffer. I am very, very sorry for what I did to cause the problem. Give specifics. Take full responsibility. It was totally my fault. Specify the behaviors that were wrong. I really apologize for having caused you pain and suffering. because of the humiliation that you suffered. Focus on the events and results that you regret. I'm sorry you weren't told about this in advance. It must have upset you. Indicate your understanding that there was an alternative. I could have handled it differently. Acknowledge the feelings that resulted. I'm sorry for the pain this must have caused you. Don't be afraid of admitting failure and error. This was my mistake. Ask for forgiveness and wait until you receive it. Can you forgive me? Include yourself as one of those at fault. We both seem to have screwed out. Indicate what you could have done to prevent the problem. I wish I'd spoken to you before this happened. Recognize the positive results of the error. This has been a real learning experience for me. Make good on your promises quickly so that they see a result. I will see that your name is put in the distribution list today so that this doesn't happen again. Ask what they need from you. What can I do to make it up to you? Negotiate an agreement for future forgiveness. What would it take for you to forgive me? Suggest concrete steps you can take to resolve the dispute. Can I take you out to lunch to make up for it? And find out how good the apology was. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate that apology? What would it take to make it a 10? O, diba? So, as more elements there are, the better the apology it is. Some varieties of apology. There is no way I could apologize for what I did. I am very, very sorry. It was completely my fault. I deeply apologize for what I did. I'm so sorry this happened. I should have handled it differently. I'm sorry for the pain this must have caused you. It's my mistake. I apologize for not letting you know about this sooner. Can you forgive me? I wish I'd spoken to you before this happened. Next time, I'll do it differently. This has been a real learning experience for me. I promise it won't happen again. What can I do to make it up to you? What would it take for you to forgive me? Now, why naman forgiveness? Sabi ni Dr. Martin Luther King, forgiveness does not mean ignoring what has been done or putting a false label on an evil act. It means, rather, that the evil act no longer remains as a barrier to the relationship. Forgiveness is a catalyst, creating the atmosphere necessary for a fresh start and a new beginning. It is the lifting of a burden or the cancellation of a debt. The degree to which we are able to forgive determines the degree to which we are able to love our enemies. To forgive, from the Latin word perdonare, leading to the English pardon, formed from per, for thoroughly, and donare, for to give, meaning to give completely or wholeheartedly. Okay? Forgive, to give completely or wholeheartedly. Some definitions of forgiveness: releasing yourself from the burden of your own false expectations. Ang gaganda nito. Releasing yourself from the burden of your own false expectations. A radical act of letting go of attachment. Reclaiming your energy for the rest of your life. The desire to communicate through action what it feels like to be loved and treated compassionately. Ito, giving up all hopes of having a better past. Ganda. Giving up all hopes of having a better past. Sabi ni Oscar Wilde, always forgive your enemies. Nothing infuriates them so. Sabi ni Martin Luther King, we must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a permanent attitude. Sabi ni May Sarton, si May Sarton is a Belgian-American poet and novelist. The United Nations is child's play compared to the tugs and splits and need to understand and forgive in any family. Sabi naman ng Dalai Lama, it does not matter whether you are a theist or an atheist. What matters is sincerity, forgiveness, and compassion. O diba? Ang bigat nun. That is the best measure of your spirituality pala. Sincerity, forgiveness, and compassion. Sabi ni Dalai Lama yun. Ha? Sabi ni Nelson Mandela, forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear. That is why it is such a powerful weapon. We hate others when we hate ourselves. We are tolerant toward others when we tolerate ourselves. We forgive others when we forgive ourselves. To get to forgiveness, first have to work through the painful experiences that require it. Forgiveness is unlocking the door to set someone free and realizing you were the prisoner. Forgiveness lives alone and far off down the road. But bitterness and art are close, gossipy neighbors, sharing the same clothesline, hanging out their things, getting their laundry confused. It's forgiveness that makes us what we are. Without forgiveness, our species would have annihilated itself in endless retributions. Without forgiveness, there would be no history. Without that hope, there will be no art. For every work of art is in some way an act of forgiveness. O diba? Without that dream, there will be no love. For every act of love, it is in some way a promise to forgive. We live on because we can love. And we love because we can forgive. Sabi ni Gandhi, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. Woo. Madami pa rito. Forgiveness releases us from self-destruction. Forgiveness requires us to give up suffering. Forgiveness means taking responsibility for choices. Forgiveness is powerful. Forgiveness is easy. Most of us have not learned techniques to reach forgiveness, but we know it begins in the heart. All one needs to begin is to want to be released from the past. The other person need not be present, though it is better if they are. Forgiveness is seeing the other person and ourselves without judgment. Forgiveness is not condonation. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. It's not something you do for someone else, but to free yourself from the continuation of pain and anger. It is a gift to your peace of mind, your self-esteem, your relationships with others, your future. Forgiveness is freeing, and forgiveness is in our control. It is a power each one of us has, independently of others. It is a choice. Sabi ni Albert Camus, I do not believe that there is no responsibility in this world and that we must give way to that modern tendency to absolve everyone, victim and murderer, in the same confusion. Sentimental confusion is made up of cowardice rather than generosity and eventually justifies whatever is worst in this world. If you keep on excusing, you eventually give your blessing to the slave camp, to cowardly force, to organize executions, to the cynicism of the great political monsters. You finally hand over your brothers. Paano naman daw to forgive? Sino sa inyong marunong magpatawad? Sabi ni Dr. Martin Luther King, forgiveness does not mean ignoring what has been done or putting a false label on an evil act. It means rather that the evil act no longer remains as a barrier to the relationship. Forgiveness is a catalyst creating the atmosphere necessary for a fresh start and a new beginning. It is the lifting of a burden or the cancellation of a debt. The degree to which we are able to forgive determines the degree to which we are able to love our enemies. Steps to forgiveness. Nakakatuwa ito kasi it gives you a chance to, hindi naman nakakatuwa, but to revisit what happened and how you feel. Remember it in detail and try to identify what the other person believed happened and how they may have felt. Identify all the reasons for not forgiving them. Parang counterintuitive, di ba? All the expectations you had of them that they did not meet, or how you would have liked them to have acted. And either choose to release yourself from your own false expectations and all the reasons you listed for not forgiving them, or identify what it will cost you to hold on to them. Kaya pinapalista. And then you design and execute a ritual act of release, completion, and closure. So, parang unilateral ito, no? Unilateral forgiveness. Without having to other person knowing that you forgave them. This is for you, really. This is a ritual of release and closure. So, meron ditong forgiveness exercises. Write down all the things the other person did that angered or upset you. Write down all the things you felt about the other person. List all the negative words to describe him or her. Write down all the expectations you had of him or her, or how you would have liked for her to have acted. List all the kinds of revenge you would like to take on him. And list all the reasons why you should not forgive her. But list all the positive words you could use to describe him. Diba? May positive words. And write down all the things you would enjoy doing with her if you could. Write in narrative what you would like him to say to you. Write a response and their response back. Diba? Parang magagawa ka ng script and dialogue. List all the things you would lose or have to give up if you forgive her. List all the things you would gain and who would you become if you did. Describe a ritual or ceremony that would allow you to surrender your expectations and forgive him completely. Write a letter forgiving her. Rate on a scale of 1 to 10 in generosity. List all the actions you need to take to forgive her. Choose one to act on. Do it. Some dangers. Wag nating i-kid ourselves that forgiveness is kidding ourselves, no? Never learning what the conflict took place to teach you. Losing the opportunity to create a deeper, more intimate relationship. Because there are some dangers in forgiveness. It is possible to think you have forgiven someone when you have only gone through the motions. It's possible to play a game of one-upmanship with forgiveness, one-upsmanship, so you will appear more righteous than the one you need to forgive. It's possible to forgive them in ways that condone or excuse what they did, encourage them to think it's okay to treat others that far. So it's one of the dangers, no? It's possible to forgive in such a way that you remain in denial and never end up forgiving yourself. The way around these diversions is to forgive the person and not what they did, and recognize that you and the person you want to forgive are the same. So seeing yourself, the person of the other, is the key to forgiveness. Not the what they did, no, but the person. So marami pa ritong ways to forgive your enemy. 50 ways, 10 ways to forgive your enemy. 50 ways to forgive your lover. Ang dami nito. Yan. I will send this all to you. Some techniques for difficult cases. Ito, us as a mediator, difficult cases. Help the victim create a virtual revenge that allows her to release her rage without actually causing the perpetrator to suffer or themselves to experience guilt. For example, ask the victim to say what her favorite favorite revenge would be and make it humorous. Even ask her to act it out with the mediator as a stand-in or use a doll or symbol instead. Afterwards, debrief. Encourage her to release her anger and point out the reasons for not taking revenge. Ngayon, kung nandun yung perpetrator, elicit from the perpetrator the words the injured person most wants to hear, like, I'm sorry, or what I did was unforgivable. If the perpetrator is unable to say these words, say them yourself, parang as a stand-in. Perhaps what she should have said was, I'm sorry, what I did was unforgivable. And watch body language for signs that the victim is relaxing or releasing anger. Ask whether the perpetrator has ever felt victimized, and if so, when and by whom, revealing the origins of victimization in the perpetrator's distant past. Point out that revenge causes revenge, which causes revenge down through generations, and that perpetration and revenge are simply ways of being proactive in the face of one's own victimization. Reveal that revenge is a form of victimization by asking the victim questions that expose the prejudices, stereotypes, demonizations, and objectifications common to both. For example, ask both parties to list the words that describe the other person, then comment on their similarities in tone and metaphoric content. Paradoxically, ask them if they hold on to their grievances and mistrust what they will do next, then assess the costs of doing so. Explore the self-interest in preventing future victimization. Ask the victim to imagine how forgiveness and revenge will feel in the long run and which they would rather experience. Focus on the spiritual strength of non-violent solutions and not demeaning or reducing oneself to the other person's level. Suggest that revenge may be exactly what the other person wants and that refusing it may be a higher form of revenge. So para itong narrative mediation, no? Now, responding to catastrophic loss. Tell stories about what happened and express the pain it produced. Express regret and forgiveness for whatever, assuming that you are the one that caused the catastrophic loss. Express regret and forgiveness for whatever you did and did not do that contributed to the suffering of others. Express regret and forgiveness for whatever you or others did and did not do that contributed to your own suffering. Speak or perform whatever is still unspoken and unperformed. Identify something positive you can do to prevent what happened from happening again. Guarantee of non-recurrence. No? Commit part of your life to making sure it does not happen again. Part of your life. An advocacy, it's a vocation. Choose that suffering will end with you. Ganda itong poem na to ni Naomi Shihab Nye. Si Naomi Shihab Nye is a American poet, editor, songwriter, and novelist. Ang tatay niya is a South African, married to an American mom. If you must lose things, feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must make up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice touches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is high you have been looking for, and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. So, kindness as the deepest thing inside, and sorrow as the other deepest thing. O, diba? Ganda. No naman ang reconciliation. Sabi ni Gandhi, I learned the true, para sa mga lawyers, I learned the true practice of law. I learned to find out the better side of human nature and to enter men's hearts. I realized that the true function of a lawyer was to unite parties riven asunder. What follows forgiveness? After forgiveness comes reconciliation, which is the ability to be in the presence of the other person without feeling angry or vulnerable. It is the highest point of healing and takes place by opening the heart. Reconciliation may or may not occur following forgiveness, as it requires not only open-hearted communication, but learning, transcendence, the amelioration of unhealthy patterns, and the restoration of positive emotional interactions. So, ang stages daw of reconciliation, una is blame, second is confusion, third is openness, fourth is trust, discovering new bases for trust. Fifth is empathy. The parties begin to see the self as other and other as self. Six is forgiveness, symbolic surrender of past grievances and complete letting go of anger and fear. And then reconciliation, creating a new basis for friendship by sharing present problems and future hopes. Renegotiation of expectations, easy expressions of affection, and open-hearted communication. Sana makita natin itong stages na to sa mga conflict na ating dinadaanan, no? Na ating minimediate. So, i-recognize natin itong steps na to at i-facilitate natin yung going from one step to another. Ang mahirap yung going to forgiveness, no? So, yung mga techniques na pinakilala kanina, sana magamit natin for both self and the other. Name the change. Identify the desired change. What do you want to release, affirm, or celebrate now that you have ended the conflict? Yan. Symbolize the change. So, meron palang function yung pagsisimbolize na natin yun, no? Yung paggagawa ng mga symbols. Symbolize what you want to change. What physical symbols or objects could you find, create, or buy to represent what you most want to change? Symbolize the action. Make that desired change come alive. What will you do with the symbols to make the desired change feel real? Personal symbolism. Empower the change with personal symbols. What objects or symbols represent the new person you would like to become or the relationship you want to have? So, name the change, symbolize the change, symbolize the action, have a personal symbol, choose place and time. What special time and environment you want to select for the ritual? Witnessing, kailangan may witness. Opening, select an opening. Begin the ritual in a purposeful, consecrated, and meaningful way. State your intentions. Say what you intend to change in your life and symbolize what you want to release or affirm. Personal stories. Infuse the ritual with power. Talk about the significance of the symbols you selected. Read favorite passages from literature or poems. Play music, dance, sing songs, tell stories, or relate what led you to this ritual in order to give it meaning. Create the change. Act the change. Speak about the change and perform a symbolic act of release passage or affirmation. Pwedeng bola yan na itatapon, halimbawa sa bintana. Affirmation or commitment, make the commitment real. Engage in a significant act to express your new way of thinking or being. Share and express gratitude. Celebrate with food. Kaya pala laging nagkakanduri, no? Celebrate with food, drink, gift giving, toasting, readings or songs, even if alone. Diba? Reaffirm the change. Create a schedule to periodically remind yourself and reinforce your commitment to change. And then for closing, give thanks. Thank everyone who contributed to your learning or shared and ritual and bring it to close. So may psychological basis yung kanduri ng mga Moro at saka mga indigenous peoples. It's rituals of release. How to rebuild trust? Honesty about yourself. Hanggat mayroong plastikan, walang trust, no? You need to have openness about problems. You have to have unconditional respect, clarity about boundaries, consistency over time, actions based on visions or values, collaboration and joint action. Yan. So trust building activities, empowerment of others, teamwork, joint participation, listening and empathizing, dependability in crisis and hard times, congruency between words and actions, social interactions, curiosity and asking open-ended questions, personal sharing, especially about mistakes, willingness to sacrifice something important, and sincere apologies. Ito, last slide na ito, no? In Bambe tribe of South Africa, when a person acts irresponsibly or unjustly, he is placed in the center of the village, alone and unfettered. All work ceases, and every man, woman, and child in the village gathers in a large circle around the accused individual. Then each person in the tribe speaks to the accused, one at a time, about all the good things the person has done in his lifetime. All the good things, all his positive attributes, good deeds, strengths, and kindnesses are recited carefully and at length. The tribal ceremony often lasts several days. At the end, the tribal circle is broken. A joyous celebration takes place, and the person is symbolically and literally welcomed back into the tribe. Napaka-smart ng tribe na ito. No?
Thank you for the nice sharing. No? Full of insights and wisdom. Ako ay simple realization na to actually forgive is to do yourself a favor. It's not for the person to benefit from your forgiveness, but it's actually doing a favor for yourself. No?
Yes.
It's really releasing you from a toxic, parang mindset to get back.
Yes.
To hurt the other person because he or she has hurt you, no. Marami kang na-share na mga wise sayings na, and I don't hindi ko na ulitin yon. They're in your presentation, but I remember one na parang to actually not to forgive is like keeping in your hands yung burning coal, no. Parang without releasing the burning coal, you're actually burning yourself with this feeling. So it's actually better for us to release it, no, and to channel it with a more positive mindset, no? Rather than adopt the mentality na an eye for an eye, no, a tooth for a tooth.
At saka yung isang reflection natin dun sa Truth and Reconciliation, MedNet, is that forgiveness comes from a very deep well of spirituality. Ang hirap humukay ng hukayin, ang hirap hukayin ng forgiveness kung wala kang deep well of spirituality within you, because it comes from a realization that you and the other person is one and created in the likeness of God or a supreme being, and that the other person, that you seeing the other person in you is something very, very spiritual, no? Recognizing the humanity of one other person in the other. Yeah. Thank you, Aldan.
It's human nature to get back, and then to take revenge. No? But that's I think that's an attribute of a normal human nature. But as you said nga, it takes a strong person. It is the attribute of a strong person. Forgiveness is an attribute of a strong person.
Of the strong and not the weak. The weak can never forgive.
While it's normal, while it's a human nature, I think we can cultivate it. No, we can really develop it within ourselves. It may not be easy, but that's the only way.
But generally, ako naman, isang reflection ko, we as Filipinos are a very forgiving nation. Can you imagine the Marcoses being brought back to power and having the levers of power in their reach after all the pillaging and the human rights violations that they have done? We are able to forgive.
That's not forgiveness. That's forgetfulness.
So it's different. No, it's different. It's ignorance.
It's both ignorance, forgetfulness, and forgiveness.
I think much ignorance pa, no, rather than forgiveness. Ano? Palagay ko. Misinformation, miseducation, etc.
Or ano pa rin yan, Che, parang yung sa harmony framework ng conflict transformation. People do not want to confront the issue, face saving, even the one who committed something, pinoprotect din nila yung face, and they would just like to preserve their, the bonds or whatever, the stability of the community. Yeah. Pero, we have learned from history, hindi nagwo-work. Siguro noong unang panahon pwede yan, no? Pero ngayon natitake advantage na nga yung mga people get away with and they repeat. So hindi siya, may cultural basis siya historically. Pero parang ngayon kaya we are seeking justice kasi hindi pag paulit-ulit hindi na maganda, tinutularan.
At saka may history din tayo ng revolts, no? May hangganan yung ating pagiging forgiving. So we have had a whole history of revolts and people power revolution as well. Ano pa ang inyong mga reflection?
Ako may reflection. I like the word yung in-introduce dito, yung release. Parang dinitake siya from a different angle. Yung releasing the pain, then through that you're able to forgive. Diba? At yung may mga rituals. So, importante nga siya. Kaya nga may sa Healing and Reconciliation module na natin, hinighlight natin yung mga rituals ng mga indigenous people. Sabi mo nga yung kanduri. Ako yung isa din yung oath-taking sa Quran, ng mga pagka nag-resolve sila, that's the highest form of release. You release it to God, you surrender it to God. Di ba? Kami nagkawang ganito, kami nagka-conflict, but I surrender it to God now, to Allah. Maganda. Sana yung, I hope we can preserve yung that when people do it, hindi na lang siya ritualistic, but really it allows for release of the
psychological process.
Sabi nga kanina ni Kat, ito sa chat sinabi niya, no?
Kasi, releasing stress.
Nililiberate mo yung sarili mo pag nag-apologize ka. Ay, pag nag-forgive.
Pag nag-forgive ka, oo. Pag-apology din, oo. We will share this, no, to everybody na nag-attend ngayon, no?
Pero yung yung release, paano ma-achieve yan sa collective level? Parang individually, madali, mag-decision ka, no, i-release ko na ito. Pero sa collective level, parang yung sinabi din ni Desmond Tutu sa Healing and Reconciliation, may steps yan para ka maka-release or para ka maka-forgive din. Yung sinabi mo kanina halos pareho din sa 4 pillars, di ba? Yung merong repentance, repair for the damage done. Ang wala dyan yung guarantees for non-recurrence. So,
marami. Lagi na lang sinasabi na making the desired change calmly by not you intend to change in your life and symbolize what you want. So ito, name the change. Maraming symbolism na hinihingi, yung rituals of release. You have to name the change, symbolize the change, symbolize the action, personal symbolism, choose place and time, witnessing, opening, intent, sharing of personal stories. I think pwede itong gawing collective. At least in a small group, not a bigger group, a whole nation, but in pockets of small groups, we could have a collective of rituals of release. No? Magandang i-pilot natin paano ito gawin sa mga maliliit na conflicts na ating ginagawa, yung rituals of release. So, share natin itong PowerPoint na ito.
Sharing ko as an energy healer din, yung importance ng forgiveness. Kaya if you noticed when meron kang kagalit or if you're resentful towards someone, ang bigat ng feeling. Lalo na dito banda sa may solar plexus. Kasi when we're angry towards someone or merong hurt or pain, there's an energetic connection or cord actually, and it's a negative cord. Kaya minsan kahit kunyari galit tayo sa tao, hindi natin maintindihan bakit pabalik-balik siya sa ating mind. Parang asar ka na nga sa kanya pero palagi mo siyang naiisip kasi may connection kayo. And when you do forgiveness exercises, it actually cuts the cord and releases both of you. So kaya mas magaan din yung feeling after forgiving. And another importance of forgiveness is if you notice there are people who are parang very healthy physically, for example, very good ang diet, balanced diet, always exercising, etc. But they still get cancer or heart disease. That's because a lot of ailments are also emotional in nature. And when we are not able to release and forgive, a lot of these things, mga resentment, anger, etc., it gets physicalized in our body. It becomes tumors and it becomes all these things. Kaya part of healing also, even physical healing, is that emotional and all levels, spiritual, emotional, and psychological, and forgiveness is a very important part of healing. So yun lang po, share ko.
Thank you, Ai. Salamat.
Hello po. Ang ganda po nung sharing mo, Ms. Che. I think na-capture lahat doon. But yung ako po kasi, on a personal note, hindi po mahirap para sa akin mag-apologize or mag-release ng frustration sometimes. Yung ano po sa akin, work in progress, siguro yung steps to forgiveness. Ang common po na ginagawa ko kasi usually is yung coping mechanism po na tinatawag is yung parang I stay away, or yung tinatawag na nagmumukmok, ganun, or nagkukulong sa kwarto. Ganun po yung nagiging coping or defense mechanism ko instead of really facing or addressing ko ano man yung source ng hurt or problem na kailangan mo i-let go yun or kailangan i-forgive. But I think naging helpful naman po sa akin dahil may pagka introverted na nagmumukmok pag ganun. Ang nagiging outlet ko po usually talaga is praying and when it's really difficult, when I'm experiencing anything that's difficult, whether pag sa family or other things, yung nabanggit ko po sa chat, I take the confession kasi it's also my way of seeking forgiveness na din naman, and also apologizing for things. Hindi po not necessarily not necessarily kung hindi ko not for me, no, or I pray for other people. Nakuha ko po to, that this might be helpful also po to the others. Sa school po kasi namin, yung aming spiritual guidance is spiritual foundation po is guided by Opus Dei. So, meron po kami parang mentoring na we are assigned na isang mentor and then a spiritual advisor who's a member of Opus Dei. So, they guide us through this process. And we remain in touch. Ako po, sa case ko, I remain in touch with them. With my mentor, I have 2 mentors po. And yung sinasabi ko po sa kanila yung struggles ko with forgiving or healing. And then, I think I would say that hindi po siya madaling experience kapag sinosolo. We have to seek for help, guidance, and outlet. And nakahanap po ako siguro ng some sense of help doon sa mentors ko. Kung wala po sila or hindi po ako na simulan doon sa spiritual formation ko at under the guidance of Opus Dei, baka hindi ko po masabi kung ano yung but they have na-save nila ako several times. All through the years that since 2016 po kasi ako nag-aral, but I was part of UANP ng 2014. And until now, sinasabi nila hindi sila nag-give up talaga na pag talaga masyado ng mabigat hindi po hindi talaga siya sa akin madaling proseso yung forgiveness, and it's something that parang yung sinasabi po nila na i-offer mo siya kay God, but paano? It's just really faith and trusting it na gagabayan ka ni Lord. So siguro for those na gaya ko na nahihirapan doon sa healing process and sa forgiveness, makakatulong kung you also seek help from people. It's not a sign of weakness na humingi ng tulong to guide you doon sa process na yun. Kasi tama, parang nakarelate din ako sa sinabi ni Ai na pwede siyang yung long time na ganyang suffering mo, internal suffering, internal struggles mo, nagma-manifest siya sa physical health, even lalo na sa mental health natin. So, ayun po, yung mga ganitong klaseng sharing can really help save many lives. So, ayun lang po, maraming salamat.
Thank you, Kat. So, I have transferred the file sa chat, so you can download it from the chat now. But we will email everybody who attended the session as well. So, yun. Isang tandaan ko sa sinabi ni Kat ay confession is good for the soul, di ba? Yun yung sinabi niya. It's also a way of forgiving ourselves. The word that comes to my mind is the word awa. Yung awa pag translate sa English is mercy and forgiveness. Mercy sa English. Sa Tagalog, awa. How to forgive ourselves and others as well. So, and awa is also manifested through acts of kindness. They are very, very intricately related yung dalawa, forgiveness and kindness, no? And sabi kanina, kindness, you can only know kindness when you have known sorrow. So magkakapatid yan, sorrow, kindness, and forgiveness. Awa. Thank you, Kat, for the sharing. Vulnerability and the willingness to seek and receive also takes courage. My takeaway from Kat. So yung vulnerability, yung openness, and the willingness to open up to others is a courageous act. Tama. It's an act of the strong. Act of the strong. Vulnerability. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable and opening it up to others.
Yung Che, yung symbolic release of anger is important. Yun din yung tinuro ni Dr. Jaime Galveston. So meron kang ritual every night. Kasi nga, di ba, yung nabanggit din ni Ayi kanina na nagsisimula sa deep-seated emotions stored in the body, ang simula ng diseases like cancer. So, merong ritual as indicated dun sa shinare mong kanina ng forgiveness. So, letting go. Kailangan siyang gawin ng ini-express mo, parang binibigyan mo ng symbol kung ano yung emotion na gusto mong i-let go. So yung tinuro ni Doc Jimmy is every night before you sleep, kung sino yung taong meron ka pang galit at anong klaseng galit. So pwede kang pumunta sa banyo, magdala ka ng mug na tubig. Yun yung parang symbolic expression mo ng iyong emotions. And then, mag-concentrate ka, kausapin mo yung mug na yun. And then, you release it by throwing the water into the toilet, tapos i-flush mo siya. So parang gagawin mo siya every night para makakatulong sa iyo to release those negative emotions. So mahalaga yung, kaya di ba sa ating process, mahalagang tinutulungan natin yung parties to name the emotions, and then yung negative emotions, kung yun yung nakakontribute sa people problem nila, hindi yung relationship nila, ganun. Doon pwede natin i-apply yun. At mga pagbigay ng tips kung paano nila ma-overcome, and they will be able to realize the importance of forgiveness. Yun lang.
Nakadaan ako sa stage ng buhay ko na I needed to forgive myself and somebody else, both, Mga nakatulong sa akin ng mabigat ng matindi ay meditation, yung isang form of meditation that you have a mantra, you say things over and over again, like I forgive myself for things that I intended or did not intend to do. I forgive others for what they intended or not intended to harm to me, mga ganon. So pareho yung mahirap gawin, pero nagawa ko through meditation and mantra chanting. Nalimutan ko na yung tawag sa meditation na yun. Parang I want. Self-forgiveness is very crucial. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Thank you, Ai. Okay.
Yung may implications sa trabaho natin. Yung as mediators, we also facilitate forgiveness and apology. So, kaya maganda nga matutunan yung steps. At sinimulan na natin yan sa MedNet kasi meron na nga tayong emphasis ngayon sa healing and reconciliation. Pero baka sa susunod na mga engagements natin sa KZE, pwede natin i-focus dyan yung model sa healing and reconciliation and facilitating forgiveness and apology. Ang lalim na nito. Mag-aaral na tayo ng maraming psychology at saka spirituality. Pero ang ganda niya kasi parang pwede ba susunod yung mga projects?
Actually, mas nakikita ko nga siyang mas relevant kaysa transitional justice. Mas pa yung healing and reconciliation aspect, yung mga rituals of release, steps to forgiveness, steps to apology, why seek apology instead of revenge, and forgiveness instead of revenge. I think those are more relevant, no? More relevant to
settings,
our
in general setting.
Of
course, in transitional justice, ano yun eh? Societies in transition. So, okay. Pero mas nga sila justice ang focus. Wala pa, hindi pa nagagawa yan sa Pilipinas.
So gawin natin yung module na ito containing these steps lang. I-translate natin into, kasi mas relevant sila pagka in your own language, no? Yung awa and forgiveness, yung symbols, yung paano ka mag-apologize. These are more
Tsaka sa tingin ko, Che, pag hinighlight na nga natin yung aspect, yung dito na realization natin na forgiveness is an act of service for yourself.
Yes.
Liberate mo yung sarili mo. At saka yung mas malalalim na aspects, hindi lang yung justice nga, na makuha mo yung gusto. Then we will really pave the way for restorative justice to become the more popular option. Kasi kung nakikita ng mga tao, ako na to tsaka it's my service to myself. How to myself? Kung nagkakasakit, dami ngayon, di marami ngayon nagkakasakit. Nagkakasakit na tayo dahil dito sa ating mga bagahe. Dapat each one tututo na ng ganitong approach o yung nakaroon ng ganitong capacity. So in resolving conflicts, mas mag-o-opt sila ng restorative. Kamaingay yung aso.
Although, tingnan natin yung slide nung feeding ourselves, dangers to forgiveness, mahalaga din yun. Yung feeding ourselves and sinasabi natin na okay lang ang isang evil act, baka hindi yun appropriate. So, maganda rin yung slide na yun, no? Some dangers to forgiveness. But how do we navigate through that, knowing the dangers, no? Knowing the dangers to forgiveness, how do we then facilitate the self-healing and reconciliation, especially in the conflicts that we are mediating? Yun, maganda yun. Halimbawa, dun sa agro-eco case natin, Carol, yung healing and forgiveness, I think which would be very valuable kung ma-facilitate natin yon para matulungan yung parties to talk to each other.
Pwede yan integrate later.
Oo nga.
But not on the early stage.
Not in the early stage, but probably in the mediation stage na, not in the conflict mapping stage.
When they're ready na, when they realize, then yun yung pwedeng parang i-open for discussion with them at saka ano yung cultural nuances.
Pwede natin paghandaan, no? Isang session na yan. At pwede rin isama sa isang training or training on nonviolent communication and negotiation, then pwede rin i-integrate some concepts on healing and forgiveness. Siguro.
Pwede din pag-aralan. Once we get to know them better, yung profile nila, yung cultural traditions nila, para appropriate. Okay, sige.
Salamat
Congratulations.
everybody. Salamat. nandyan na yung email na lang namin uli.
Okay.
Salamat.